Who's going to play you in the movie? It's going to be Hanks, isn't it?
Ryan. Maybe we'll do a movie where we just switch. We just switch. Right? I play him, and I get lifts.
Save that for the Premier League. I mean, that's a big concept, man. My guest today is a Philadelphian polymath who's not content with just, co-creating juggernauts. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, a mythic quest. He also decided to become co-owner of Wrexham AFC, a club that then proceeded to pull off the impossible, becoming the first team in the British football pyramid to earn 3 promotions in 3 straight years. Football equivalent, essentially, of Tony Hawk landing a 900 while wearing football boots. And in Welsh. Next season is tenacious North Wales Poet Warriors will be playing in the Championship, the second tier of football, for the first time since 1982. And thanks to Wrexham's success and this man's shared vision, club's creating a new, surging, successful reality for its long-starved supporters, and the community itself is thriving. I don't like to be hyperbolic, but he's within touching distance of becoming part of Welsh legend on levels previously only known to St David, Owen Glyndwr and Catherine Zeta-Jones. I raise my glass of ice-cold STōK coffee to welcome back. It's Mr. Rob McElhenney.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you. That was quite an opening.
Well, you deserve it and more. I feel like I've actually undersold you, Rob, because we are speaking just days after the League One season ended. I don't know if you've heard, but Wrexham finished in second place. How surprised were you to find yourself on the field yet again, celebrating another history-making promotion last weekend?
Well, I wouldn't say I was surprised. I had a lot of confidence in the club. That's the beauty of fandom, is that you get to prognosticate and talk about it and chat, and whether it's with your friends or with your family members or as a living. It's a ton of fun, but ultimately we don't know what we're talking about. It's, you know who does? The players and the manager. And in this case, I spoke with Phil at the beginning of the season. I said, realistically, what do you think our chances are? And he said, I think we got a shot. And I said, for what? And he said, I think we can get one of those top 2 spots. And I said, you are aware, Phil, that very famously a supercomputer picked us to finish like 14th or 15th. I don't know what supercomputer actually even means, but Vegas had us at like 12th or 13th, certainly outside of the playoff zone, but Phil was adamant. He felt like we had a chance. And more importantly, the players said, we can do it. And when James McLean says he can do something, you better believe that you could do it.
Who am I to argue with James McLean? I mean, the most surprising thing about Wrexham is that the Wrexham references and the vintage Wrexham jersey popping up in the most recent season of Black Mirror. That's probably the only thing that surprised you.
I saw that, and it did. And in fact, the trailer came out before the episode, and it was in the trailer, and somebody sent it to me. So I watched it as soon as the episode came out. Yeah, it feels like it's pierced the culture in a really fascinating way, and it's just happened so fast.
Black Mirror classic football shirts crossover, no doubt incoming. I'd like to thank STōK Cold Brew Coffee for making this entire series possible. STōK is a staple in the Bennett refrigerator, especially the STōK Espresso blend. STōK are also proud to support Wrexham AFC, the club that's taken the football world by storm in recent years. I've stood in the STōK stand, in the STōK Kairas myself, and loved every second. I wish that upon you in the season to come. Check out the full lineup of 48-ounce cold brew products, something for everyone, from light roast to decaf to seasonal favourites, in a refrigerated, multi-serve format. Be sure to follow Wrexham AFC, and thank you again to the beautiful team at STōK. Let's walk through some of the beats of this season, because back in August, Rob, we had the honour of appearing live on stage in Vancouver with many of the stars of the Wrexham team during that pre-season Rex Coast tour of California and Western Canada. And Ollie Palmer, that singular, perennially shirtless striker, he whispered into the microphone his season prediction. Back to back to back. And he was the only person who was doing that kind of outward confidence. And Ollie Palmer is 95% confidence and 5% small batch beard oil. Even Humphrey Ker, Wrexham then executive director, said if the team finished higher than 12th in the table, somebody should build a statue of the great Phil Parkinson. Take us back. When this season started at home against Wycombe, you were there. What were you feeling? What were your expectations?
Well, we were elated. If you recall, our welcome into League Two was not so glorious. We got hammered at home. And I remember the opposing fans chanting, "Welcome to the EFL, welcome to the league." And it was quite a stark reminder of jumping up a league, what actually happens. So we expected something like that for the first game of the season. We knew it would be tough, but we played really well and we won pretty convincingly. And it felt really good. And it turns out we beat the team that wound up being our biggest competitor all season, as Birmingham very quickly distanced itself from the rest of the pack. And it was a good sign for things to come. And truthfully, Raj, this was the best start that we had since we began with the club.
It was almost too easy. I was there that day. I saw with my own eyes Cleworth, Fletcher, Marriott all scored. As he saw you in the boardroom looking down on your team in the late summer sun. But by the 6th week of the season, as you say, Wrexham was somehow top of the table. It was almost too effortless, frictionless. You went to Birmingham City. When Wrexham played them in mid-September, you went by yourself. Tom Brady, he mobbed up. He rolled in deep with David Beckham. It's honestly like watching an advertisement for men's skincare routines. Wrexham went into that night unbeaten. And despite Jack Marriott scoring first 3 minutes in, you left on the wrong side of a 3-1 loss. First of all, what did you learn from that evening, Rob, other than that you probably should have taken reinforcements?
Well, I learned that there was a vast divide between us and Birmingham at the time. That was for sure. And we knew that there was a reckoning coming at a certain point, just simply because we had been playing so well and had blasted out the gates. We knew that, we always want to temper our expectations, not because we want to assume the worst. I never assume the worst. In fact, I've always assumed the best. But just that we knew that we had built a solid squad, but I don't know that we built a squad that was going to come out and be able to dominate. And to go into Birmingham with that roster that they had and to even compete was going to be a challenge. And not only did we compete, but we went up. But that didn't last very long. And then it felt like we got pretty handled through the entire game.
Were you annoyed at yourself that you didn't bring someone? When Brady unleashed Beckham, were you just like, oh, rookie move, McElhenney?
No, I gave Beckham some for changing allegiances.
You did.
He came to our game first, and then I guess he went to go see Tom. But we actually had a blast. Besides the game itself. Pregame was fun. I spent a lot of time with Tom, and also Tom Wagner, who's a fantastic guy. And then halftime, we were still feeling pretty good. It was 1-1 at that point. And then second half was kind of brutal. And I sat, just right in the stands, and I was actually treated really well. It was a chorus of boos and some heckling from here and there, but at the end of the day, I think people respected my safety, let's just say. And it turned out to be a great night simply because I got to spend so much time with their team afterwards and talking to Tom Wagner and just listening to him and what they're building.
The thing that kept them in check was the knowledge that you could unleash DeVito if things got a little bit hectic there. But your team rebounded so bloody well. They kept winning. 2024, they ended up on an 8-match unbeaten streak, drew 1-1 in a reverse fixture against Birmingham City in January, and ultimately finished the season so strong, just one loss in the last 15 games. And I recently had quite electric goal sorcerer Ollie Rathbone on, and asked him, among the players, whether there was a match, whether there was a moment in which it all felt like the focus shifted from just surviving in this league, the consolidation idea of, that Humphrey Ker came up with at the beginning of the season, to thinking and believing that they would be promoted. And he said that when they beat Wycombe in early March, players turned the music up in their dressing room after the game. And it was assistant manager Steve Parkin who came in, turned it down, and told them this. He said, don't act like you were winning the league. There's still a league to be won. Now, Rob, Steve Parkin would not dare touch your stereo. So when did you start to believe, when did you start to think or whisper to yourselves that this team, your team, was going to go up again?
Oh, wow. I didn't allow myself to think that until after the final away game that I went to. But early in the season, I felt really, really positive. We just kept winning. And I just kept texting out to Ryan and to the Allen family and to Sean Harvey and to Humphrey and Michael. I don't want to jinx anything, but this is our best start yet. And this feels like a really solid squad. And I'm waiting for the shoe to drop, but it doesn't seem to be dropping. And of course, we always want to temper everybody's expectations because you just don't want to get or even feel a sense of entitlement that you deserve to win or you deserve to always put on a good show out there, because there's a lot of games and a lot of things that can happen, and you're just ultimately hoping for the best. Then it just happened. But once we got to the end of the season, the Charlton game in which we clinched, I promise you, I swear, and we have photographic evidence of this, I was not nervous at all. I was not angsty or edgy. Once Wickham lost earlier in the day, I just knew we were going to win. I just felt it in my bones, and I was not nervous.
I adore you. Whatever you have, this like natural optimism that you exude needs to be bottled. I think it's like the life force the world needs right now. But you mentioned the last away game, or the critical away game of the season, which was week 44 of this epic poem of a journey. It's very lovely, actually, watching this from afar. You went to Blackpool on a Monday night. It's kind of, listeners over here, it's like the Jersey Shore of England. And you sat with 2,000 plus Wrexham fans in the away end. They made the trip to Bloomfield Road. Rob, got to be honest, watching along on television, that was the loudest away end I've ever heard. And I know I heard you specifically singing James McLean's song. Humphrey Ker told us that you were, quote, a changed man after your experience in the Wrexham away end. Can you put into words what it was like for you? You wanted this, you talked about doing this, you then did it. How did it make the match different?
For lack of a better word, and I'll just keep it as simple as possible, it was just so fun. And it was something that I've wanted to do for many years, but we haven't done it because we want to be respectful. Honestly, we want to be respectful to the other stadiums because it does create a safety issue from their perspective, just because you have to have a certain amount of security. And I never felt unsafe, and our club never felt unsafe or anything like that. It's just that you have to allocate certain resources to certain things. And we always felt kind of bad about putting the other owners or the other stadiums in that position. But honestly, Blackpool was amazing. They were really accommodating and they were great. And it was a beautiful city actually to visit right there on the water. And then I got to be in the mix right in the middle of it. And it was just so fun. I mean, just joyous, a joyous day.
What did it change for you in terms of your understanding of the essence of the club?
I don't know if it changed anything. I would say it reinforced things that I already knew, but there is just something different. As anybody who's listening to this has been to, I'm sure, many sporting events, live sporting events, and maybe a portion have spent some time in those boxes or suites or different viewing areas, and those are fine. Those are great experiences, and depending on what you're looking for, you're very well taken care of, and you have food and beverage and people, and it's a comfy seat and everything. And maybe it's warm depending on where you are, or maybe it's cool depending on where you are in the season of whatever particular sport. But what you are missing, and anybody who has sat in the real seats knows, what you're missing is the true experience. And that is sitting shoulder to shoulder across many, many aisles with loud, raucous, giant community of people who have traveled ostensibly hours away to be together singing in unison. That does not exist in the luxury suites.
Well, when I was a kid on the terraces, when you were all packed together, there was always a moment when you felt something hot and wet and you realised someone was using a rolled-up program to piss on your leg from behind. And by the way, you haven't lived unless that's happened, but you were sat right behind a gent in a bucket hat covered with a 4-letter word written in a very tasteful font. God, I can't tell you how much I'm sure you would have been willing to pay for that hat after the experience.
The only reason I even noticed that was because in some of the images afterwards, they had to blur his hat. I remember him being a lively chat, and believe me, what he was saying was just as colorful as his attire.
I got a shout out to the Wrexham social team for the speed with which they photoshopped so assiduously to get you up. But manager Phil Parkinson talked about how you had gone to the team the day before the game, and he praised the feeling of togetherness that had carried the team to the point. Can you tell us what you talked about, what you felt you needed them to know in that moment?
Yeah, I would never presume to talk to a professional athlete about what it's like to perform because I am not a professional athlete, nor am I an athlete at all. So Phil asked me if I would come and talk to the guys. And so what I did was reached out to a few of my friends who are professional athletes. And I said, hey, if you were to hear from, and over the years, I've reached out to these guys a few times just to say, A, do you want to have a relationship with the chairman? How involved do you think that they should be? Just because I want to make sure that the players always feel supported, whether that means me embracing them or me leaving them alone. And, to a person, they all said, we would love to have a relationship with the owners. And so Ryan and I have always embraced that. So in this case, I just said, hey, look, this is the situation that we're in. And the manager asked me if I would speak to them. How do you think I should approach it? And everybody had different ideas on how I should go in and what I should say, but the spirit of it was always the same. And it was kind of what I was hoping and assuming it would be. Not some sort of rah-rah, Newt Rockney type speech. That's not my place. I certainly can't talk about strategy or execution, but I can alleviate some stress for them. One of the players mentioned to me a story that I thought was devastating. He said, after a particularly terrible loss, the chairman of the club that he was playing for came into the locker room and he screamed at the players. And he said, my son is in the box and he's crying. You've made my son cry. Screaming at these guys. And then left. And I thought, and by the way, as he was telling the story, he wasn't laughing. So it wasn't like he thought it was, a funny anecdote, or he was shook by it. I mean, I can't imagine a more horrible way to treat a room full of people who have just given their blood, sweat, and tears for you and left it all out on the pitch to make it so, what level of narcissism and holery does it take to walk into that room and make it about you and your family's experience as opposed to what they just went through and what they put themselves through for you and for everybody that was watching on TV and at home. I couldn't wrap my head around how you would approach something like that. So obviously we always want to present something different, let's just say, than that. And I thought, how do I give the opposite remarks to them? And this is true because, people can smell inauthenticity a mile away. But I meant this when I said it. We'll either win on Saturday and we'll get automatic promotion, or we'll win the final game of the season and we'll get automatic promotion, or we'll win in the playoffs. And if we don't win in the playoffs, we'll win next year. And if we don't win next year, we'll win the year after that. And I truly believe that. And I thought in any one of those outcomes, we will have eventually achieved our goal. So just take that off of your shoulders and just don't sweat it. It's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. Just go out there and play like you did when you were 9 years old. And I took them through a visualization exercise, which was like super Hollywood woo-woo, but I got it from golf. I actually did learn it from sport, not Hollywood, not acting class. But I went through the whole exercise and I asked them to shut their eyes. And I said, remember a time when you realized you were great at football, right? You realized there was a moment in your life. Maybe you were 8, maybe you were 9, maybe you were 10. But you remember that you were great. You were better than everybody else. And you knew it, right? It was like, maybe it was a pickup game with friends. Maybe it was a high school game. Maybe it was that time your dad asked you to come out on a Sunday and play with his friends and you scored a hat trick and you were better than them. I don't know. But there was a moment at which you realized you were great at football. And then at some point between that point and now, football realized that you were great. And that is none of your business. That's the business of football, recognizing your greatness. But I want you to dispense with that and just think about when you remembered that you were great. And I can guarantee you to a person, you were having a blast because you were 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, and football was just a game, and you didn't worry about what football thought about you. You just remembered, you knew that you were great at football. And I want you to find a moment during the game. And I said, I will challenge you. I will come up after the game, win, lose, or draw. And I'm going to ask you, when did you have that moment? And then I want you to tell me what that moment was. That's how hardcore I got with it. I looked out and I saw them. They were all had their eyes closed, even the managers. And some of them were laughing and some of them were smiling and some of them were getting emotional. And I talked to a few of them afterwards about it. Because they all really did take themselves to that place, wherever that meant for them. Then they went out to Blackpool and it looked like they were having a blast. Now, I would never suggest that I had anything to do with that, other than I just reminded them that they can go out and have fun. And if they go out and have fun, they have the chairman's permission to play like they're 8 or 9 or 10 years old. And that was it.
It's magnificent, Rob. It really is. Who's going to play you in the movie? It's going to be Hanks, isn't it?
Ryan. Maybe we'll do a movie where we just switch. Oh, we just switch. Where I play him and I get lifts.
Save that for the Premier League. I mean, that's a big concept, man. Whatever you did, A, it was beautiful. B, it worked. Because Wrexham were back home, back at the STōK Cold for that crucial truth or dare of a matchup against Charlton. You needed Wycombe to get a wrong end of a result. Wycombe did get the wrong end of the result. You issued your video in the morning that you've talked about when you said you really believe in the players. You didn't feel nerves. You'd looked in their eyes. You've told us that you truly believe that. Wycombe went and lost to Orient, which means if Wrexham beat Charlton, they were in the promised land, astonishing promised land of the Championship. And with you and Ryan watching together in the box, Town came out so strong, came out swaggering, honestly. Performance of the season. 16 minutes in, Ollie Rathbone scored with an absolute rocket. I mean, it was such a rocket, Katy Perry would have boarded it if she could. Less than 2 minutes later, Sam Smith's Kung Fu stylings made it 2. There was another Sam Smith goal. Job done. 3-0. I love watching you and Ryan embrace that moment in the box. All of the faces in there. It was like watching two dudes who've achieved a lot. I mean, you've achieved a lot in your different ways, your different journeys. But in that moment, Rob, it felt like all of you, back to back to back, wildest dreams territory, all the pretense had fallen away. You looked to me like just two fans watching the unbelievable happen before your eyes. What did it feel like?
Well, this was a theme for me over the last few weeks of the season where I remember something Jeffrey Lurie told me when I first started, and I put it into the documentary, season 1. He said, you have to remember that this is such an immense privilege and opportunity, and you have to have fun. Because if you're not having fun, then it's truly not worth it. You should be doing something else with your life. And I'm always having fun with this, but yes, it's a roller coaster of emotions, as you know. But going to that Blackpool game and sitting in the away and spending the last 2 weeks with the team, regardless of what happened, I was going to stay there till the end. I was prepared to stay there through the playoffs, which would have been done wonders for my marriage, and my kids would have wondered where I was. However, it was just so much fun. So I think what you were seeing on our faces was joy. And I, too, was doing my visualization exercise and was going back to a place when I was a little kid and was just rooting for the Eagles and cheering for the Eagles because nothing else mattered on that particular Sunday. And I was doing the same thing this year. You can see in our body language, which we talked about later, was totally different from the first promotion. We kind of, two of us, it was not rehearsed or anything. We were in the moment and someone was shooting us from behind. You see us both sort of like slouch as if we're like releasing the demons and something was taken off of our shoulders or something. And in this one, it was the opposite. We just like rose up and we were celebrating because it was just a joyous occasion from start to finish.
How do you celebrate? And a connected question, what's the best hangover cure?
Look, this is going to sound like a shameless plug, but it is absolutely true. I drank 4 Walls Irish American whiskey. I swear to God I did.
Who would have thunk it?
And that's all I did. And here's the key. And like 4 people, I swear this is true. The Surgeon General would probably put me up on charges, and you can't mark it this way. But I will say, because you can't say 4 Walls doesn't give you a hangover. Because trust me, if you drink enough of it, it will give you a hangover. But I had 4 people come up to me the next day after that and say, I can't believe it. I feel fine. I feel great. And I was drinking 4 Walls all night. So
I feel better than I did before the drinking began even.
Yes.
Some people said, allegedly.
I stuck to 4 Walls and water.
Yep.
So I would have 4 Walls. I would do lots of shots with the guys. They were all drinking. So I did shots of 4 Walls and then drank water. And I was still pretty responsible because at the end of the day, I still am one of the chairmen. I have to act with a certain amount of decorum and dignity and respect. And I went to bed at, I don't know, 1:30 or 2 a.m.
When we go to the Premier League, we're going 5 walls, baby. I do want to quickly mention, next morning, you were up early. You were looking, well, you weren't looking sprightly. That's a slight exaggeration. But you were a loyal friend. You went to Manchester to watch Humphrey Ker, a.k.a. Posh Yao Ming, run his very first marathon. He battled against unseasonably hot temperatures, 2 very bleeding nipples, to finish the race in support of the incredible Wrexham Miners project. Ultimately raised an incredible $180,000 in support of that organisation. To hear more about that, listen to Humphrey, who appeared a couple of weeks ago to talk about that on this show. What did you tell him after he crossed the finish line? Because it's an incredible 1-2 punch for a weekend.
I mean, I was just so proud of him. I congratulated him. Look, I thought that there was going to be a moment when we challenged him to do this. I thought there was going to be a moment at which I came to him and I said, you know, a week before or 2 weeks before, and I would come to him and say, okay, Humphrey, how do you feel? And he was going to say, Rob, I feel fantastic. I lost, 10 pounds. I'm in the best cardiovascular shape of my life. I'm never going to not be running. I'm going to be running every day. And I've been eating healthy and I feel great. That did not happen. What did happen was 2 weeks before the marathon, when I was out there, I saw him and I said, Humphrey, how do you feel? He goes, dreadful. I feel awful. I feel terrible. I've got sciatica. Everything hurts. My knees hurt. My feet hurt. I hate this. I hate it. I don't want to do this. And I'll be honest with you, that makes it even more inspiring to me. And it makes him, certainly in my eyes, even more of a giant than he already is. The fact that he hated every second of it and then did it anyway. That's one thing like to do when it's like a 3 or 4 minute something or even an hour long workout. You're talking about hating something for 26.2 miles. That is, I've never run a marathon before. I like to work out, but I've never tested myself like that. And I don't know what kind of will it takes to hate something that much and to still see it through because of the cause that he believed in so much.
You've just described being an Everton fan, to be candid to me, Rob. But Godspeed, he is one of the most special human beings I've come in touch with. I can't wait for a Chariot of Fire's reboot to be made with him in the starring role. But you now have a little over 3 months until the next season starts. Ed Sheeran has already promised that when Wrexham play his Ipswich Town, the Tractor Boys will quote, and I'm using this word loosely, F you up. I mean, Rob, Wrexham will be going to Ipswich Town. You'll be going to Leicester City, to Southampton. You'll be playing sides that have just been relegated from the Premier League. Teams that have that experience, have that money. Has it sunk in for you yet what that means? The new challenge that lies ahead in this promised land?
I think it's just so specific to human nature, and I'm very much guilty of this as well. But I would tell you that within minutes of us winning the back-to-back promotion and being down on the field, we were being asked the question, are you ready for next year? Everybody is already looking forward. And I'm like, can we just enjoy the moment? Can we stay present for just 10 or 15 minutes and enjoy and bask in the glory that is the football gods shining upon us? We are very much aware of how ridiculously fortunate we are. We know how unreal all of this is. We know that there is a reality check, that is just an inherent part of sports and fandom. We're always going into every season with measured optimism. I think my optimism is less measured than Ryan's. He's a lot more pragmatic and I'm more excitable. I just assume that things are going to work out. I don't know. We hired the right people, and why not assume the best and see what happens as opposed to assume the worst? I was just talking about this to the documentary people. I don't even understand that. I don't know why people would approach something assuming that it's going to go poorly as opposed to just assuming it's going to go well.
It's called being British, Rob. That's the old Steve Coogan joke. If you give a British person the choice between their own success and your failure, they'll choose your failure every time. Like, genuinely, it's a different mindset to a Philadelphian, romantic who's emerged and taken on the world. Very different mindset.
My son recently asked me, which I thought was a pretty interesting question. I had to come up with something on the fly. We were just jumping on the trampoline, actually. And he said, "Hey, Dad, what's the difference between jealousy and envy?" And I thought, well, okay, that's actually a pretty profound question that you're asking me as I'm as I'm jumping on a trampoline with you. And the best I could come up with, and I don't know if this is true, but I think jealousy is coveting what someone else has. And I think that there actually can be positive things that come out of jealousy, maybe depending on how you look at it and how you frame it. Someone might have something you want or think you want, and then you have to go through the steps to get that thing. Whether that makes you happy or not is not relevant. It's just, at least it will motivate you in some capacity. So it just depends on how you take that, that quote unquote jealousy and transmute it into something positive. But envy is insidious. Because I believe that, and the reason that envy is one of the deadly sins that I remember from my Catholicism days, that envy means that I want what you have, but I can't be happy unless you don't have it. And that I don't understand. I have been very jealous of many people in my life. Envy is something I don't think I feel.
I mean, envy is drowning in jealousy. And you're right. I mean, it is fascinating. Within minutes, people are asking you the next one, almost, when are you next going to fail? I bet you within minutes, Sheeran was calling Beckham, trying to book him for his suite for when Ipswich do play Wrexham. Unleash the Beckham force against you on behalf of the Tractor Boys. But how do you think about it? On the most recent Fozcast podcast, former Wrexham goalkeeper Ben Foster talked about how he believes within 5 years Wrexham will be in the Premier League. You and Ryan have often said or joked that that's the goal. How do you understand it? Is there any kind of a timetable that you put on it?
Well, we have a board meeting in a few weeks, and I can give you a heads up after that. But for now, we're just going to go to Vegas and enjoy it. As you know, because we've been friends since the very beginning of this, that's always been our goal. And people would laugh when we would say that, especially members of the press, but fans and lots of people would laugh. And I always found that fascinating. I never got upset about it. I never got even a chip on my shoulder about it. I was confused. I never understood why that would be funny. Like, that's the way that the system is set up. Well, I didn't set up the system. Somebody else set up the system so that you could theoretically take a team from the top or out of the league and bring them up to the top. So why would you set up the system if you couldn't believe that it could be done? And obviously teams have proved that before. So I've always found it interesting and not offensive that people would laugh at that goal. I don't hear them laughing as loud now as they did 4 years ago, but they probably still are somewhere in the world. And I just don't give a Sorry.
It's such a great way to go through life. I've got to tell you, whatever you have, that approach, that mindset, that world view, I need a little bit. As a very glass, half-empty human being, be like Rob McElhenney, not like me in any way, shape or form. But you are on a journey, and journey has changed. Last time we spoke, you talked about how difficult it can be to say goodbye to players who've been a critical part of the journey. Like former captain Luke Young, that long throw king Ben Tozer. There's like a biblical lineage of players giving way to a new generation of heroes. Ben Tozer begat Max Cleworth. Mark Howard begat Arthur Okonkwo. How do you handle the reality of saying goodbye, of the business decisions that inevitably have affected and will affect these very human relationships?
It's brutal. It's brutal. And also that system that I was just celebrating of promotion and relegation, there's a tragic flaw in that as well, which is that very oftentimes the players who are helping the club achieve that goal and winning, are winning themselves out of a job.
Exactly.
And that is tragic. That's tragic because they're giving everything that they can to help you win. And then their reward for that is to be let go as someone else takes their place. And we are very cognizant of that. We have players, Andy Cannon has been promoted 4 years in a row. 4 years in a row. He went Stockport, and then he came to us, and then us 3 years in a row. Whereas George Dobson has played every single year of his career, which is 10 years, in League One, and has never been promoted. So this is the first time that he has actually even been promoted. And then we've got so many players, countless players, who have been promoted off of teams and then dropped down or remain in the league that they were in, that they just got out of, and they have to fight their way back out again. So we have so much empathy. I want to say empathy, but I don't know what that feels like. So compassion, I guess, would be the word, for the guys that have put so much of themselves into this. And that's why I want to stay present mostly. I want to make sure that they feel, regardless of what happens in the off season, because another thing, Raj, that's brutal, but I understand why, is how quickly Phil, and every team, I suppose, makes these decisions very quickly. Because it's actually quite humane, because it gives people the opportunity to go and find other clubs. But, we come back from Vegas, and I think within a couple of weeks, Phil will have made those calls and spoken to those guys and released however many he's talking about releasing. We haven't discussed it yet. And that is just brutal. So I want them, from the time that they won all the way up until that moment, to really feel how grateful we are for the service that they put in. And hopefully Vegas can fill some of those gaps.
Well, one of the behind-the-scenes heroes is head scout Chris Johnson. He'd be thinking about next season, the summer transfer window. The player profile that you're looking for, shopping in slightly more luxe stores, a bigger money ether. How would you describe a Wrexham player? And as the team, the club continues to grow, have you thought about how you can keep the singular culture around it as it becomes a ever more glamorous financial reality?
Yes, this is something we talk about and think about all the time, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what we want for the club. It doesn't matter what Ryan wants. It doesn't matter what I want. It doesn't matter what Humphrey wants, or Sean, or Michael, or anybody. What matters is what the town wants. And the only way you can know what people want is to ask them and to listen and to make sure that we are not building something that they don't want. And you'd be surprised at some of the answers that we get. But I think the most important and enduring one is that they feel that it's a club that is still representative of their community. I believe that's an ethos. I think any version of a Wrexham team has to have a working class feel to it. I know it sounds crazy because there is like a Hollywood sheen to it. That's been imposed upon the media, and by the way, our own self-owned by making a documentary about it, and by nature of our professions. But it is a working class town. It is a working class ethos, and it's a working class team. You can tell by our biggest heroes being people like Paul Mullen, a proper Scouser who would define himself as a working class lad who happens to play football. So I think anytime we deviate away from that, you're going to wind up getting into trouble. But that authenticity has to be maintained. The second that goes away, the whole thing is ruined.
You talk about Paul Mullen. After Wrexham were promoted past 2 seasons, you famously took the team from Wrexham to Las Vegas for their post-season celebrations, which had become an epic part of the ritual. It was Mullin that once suggested they should go to Butlins instead, so people would stop making a big deal out of those Vegas vacations. For US audience, Butlins, it's a little bit like going to Myrtle Beach, and I'm saying that as someone that loves South Carolina and any store that gives you free hermit crabs. But in his final words to the team, after they ended this season with that away win at Lincoln City, the great Phil Parkinson, he told the players to, quote, enjoy every effing minute. Just make sure you come back alive. It always sounds like a Guy Ritchie movie when he says those things. Can you tell us, what have you got planned for the team as a reward this summer as you and they are about to hit Vegas?
Well, we try to give them the full 5-star treatment for all the reasons aforementioned. We want to make sure that they feel valued beyond just what they were able to achieve on the pitch, that we're endeavoring to do something that lives and breathes outside of a football pitch as well. But the key to all of it must be the players, right? I mean, at the end of the day, they are the ones that have to go out and execute. And do they represent the badge that they wear? Do they represent the town that they play for? Do they represent the culture of the club? And so if the answer is yes, and they have then achieved the goal that was set before them, then they must be treated like the kings that they are. And especially since it's such a fleeting feeling right? And look, that's also part of the fun, is that it then starts again and all the chips are back on the table, or they're not, or either way, like you have to go and see if you can do it again or not do it again, and people are rooting for you. That's the fun. But if you don't enjoy the wins and you just lament the losses, then you are going to have a miserable life and a miserable experience. So yes, I already know what you're going to say because I've known you long enough. I've known you long enough to already know that is your ethos. I get it, but it doesn't have to be. Raj, I'll give you the number of a couple people you can talk to.
I'll call you afterwards. By the way, this Vegas trip is special. Max Cleworth finally old enough to drink.
Yes, we still have a couple of players who are not, so we have to have special accommodations for them as well, because we'll go out to dinners and obviously they're welcome there, but then you go out, we send them to nightclubs and things like that where you have to be 21. So we have to set up a separate series of events for them, which will be nice because there's a bunch of the players that don't drink anyway, and they'll hang out with them.
It would all be so much easier if you took them to the Hay Book Festival. I have two last questions for you. The first is that 2 years ago, Humphrey Ker was on the Tifo Football podcast. He was asked to imagine Wrexham's future, almost your visioning exercise. And he predicted, I love this, a Phil Parkinson dynasty, which has become a reality. But he also said that he'd once told you that there'd be a time in the year 2029 when the team would, quote, draw 3 games in a row in the championship and someone will call you the C word in an airport because they don't remember the bad times. And Rob, it's been over 40 bloody years since Wrexham were in the second tier of British football. 2 generations have grown up without experiencing this kind of wonder. Is that ultimately the best legacy that you can have? That you and Ryan have helped usher in a new reality where supporters just can't remember the bad times?
Look, of course, that would be ideal in any organizations. I mean, I think about the Patriots quite a bit because it's really fascinating to watch that very well-run organization, because obviously they haven't been, all the Americans know, they have not done very well this last couple of years, but they had that Brady Belichick dynasty from 99 or 2000 all the way up until 2020. I mean, 20 years is insane, but before that they were terrible. So I don't ever remember a time outside of when they got blown out in the Super Bowl in 85 that the Patriots were ever good. Then they were untouchable for 20 years. And now they came back down to reality. That just does not happen. That Tiger Woods-esque just like domination or Muhammad Ali or like it just doesn't happen. So, and also if and when it does, it's like that year in F1 last year, or 2 years ago, where it was like Verstappen. And just it gets to the point where you're like, okay, well, there's no more competition, I guess. It's just not that fun. And you want to see this is the weirdest part of it. And everybody who's listening to this knows that you want to win every year, right? But we also know, either in our frontal lobes or in the back of our head, that if you won every year, there would be no point to it. So it's actually the relationship and the love that you have for each other and your community is forged in pain, which I think says something beautiful about humanity, which is that when we are at our most vulnerable, most beaten down, most susceptible to misery, we have each other to hold on to and to help lift each other up. And I think sport is just a great metaphor for that. Hopefully one day we'll be competing with Liverpool. But their song that they sing, that you will never walk alone, is just so unbelievably beautiful for a football team and for a community. And one day I hope to mash their dreams into oblivion. But for now, I celebrate along with Humphrey because he loves Liverpool and it's his team. And interestingly and ironically, it's also Paul Mullen's team. And so I've followed Liverpool and I'm so happy for them and all their supporters. But really just that song exemplifies what we're trying to do as well. We want people in Wrexham to always feel, and when I say in Wrexham, I mean like people all over the world who follow and love that team, that they are not alone, that they are going through this with each other, maybe in different time zones, that thick or thin, they are there until the end. And that's what I said to the players 3 weeks ago. I said, I will be here to the end no matter what happens. And that's how I felt then. It's how I feel now. And hopefully it's how our fan base feels all over the world.
It's beautiful poetry, Rob. It really is. Even though the English tabloid, someone's going to rip it and say, "We will mash you," Liverpool Football Club claims Rob McElhenney as his team entered the Championship. I just want to put on the record he didn't say that. What you said is actually stunning. I believe this deeply. You know, in this world of ours, which is ever more chaotic and divided, that sense of connectivity, that sense of shared, of feeling alive that football gives us, is to me more important than ever. And I will say, watching Wrexham week in, week out, you have made so many people, my God, in Wales, in North Wales, in the town of Wrexham, unbelievably, but the rest of us in that feeling it emerging out of that epicenter, you made us feel alive.
Well, thank you. I mean, look, there's a story that I think best exemplifies the spirit of football. It happened this season, and it was a potential tragedy that turned into a triumph. But we had a supporter in the away end at Wickham who had a heart attack. And we didn't know what was happening in real time, but they stopped the game for a very long time, 20, 25 minutes. And we were getting intermittent reports of what had happened. But what happened was the man had a heart attack, and with the help of Wrexham supporters and then Wickham supporters and then the staff at Wickham and the ambulance that came, they literally saved this man's life together. They kept him alive for 12 minutes, working as a team, both people from Wickham and Wrexham supporters, and then eventually the medical staff. And to me, I don't know anything that better exemplifies the heart of what this entire experience is. That yes, we are on a promotion race. Yes, you are our mortal enemy on the pitch for 90 minutes. And yes, we desperately want to win. But ultimately, when real world stakes come into play, when real tragedy could strike, what do? We link arms in unison and we work together to help save someone's life. So for that, I will always be forever grateful to Wickham. I always will wish them the best. I hope that they go up. But ultimately, no matter what, that is how I will remember them until the day that I die.
Oh, Rob McElhenney. I will say, whenever I speak to you, in your adopted home of Los Angeles, over the Los Angeles River, there's a 7-foot-tall monument to the poet, activist and artist Lewis McAdams that has the inscription, "If it's not impossible, I'm not interested," written on it. And whenever I listen to you, I do feel that spirit. All I can say with that last story, I'm going to raise my stoke to you, Rob McElhenney, to life and the championship season to come. Thank you, mate.
To life, man, and hopefully we'll do this again in the championship, and we won't be talking about. Well, we'll see. We'll see what we're talking about.
Godspeed, you beautiful
Thank you.
man. Courage.
Thanks, Raj.